54 now for a quick quote that could save you hundreds every month. You'll also find out about included benefits like panic assistance and help it out 24-hour roadside assistance. Yusuf, 45 from Tegadal, pays just 700 Rand a month for his 2021 VW Polo.
Help it out. Took the family up to go and see the snow and I got stuck. The service was quick, even though it was in a very remote area. Absolutely phenomenal service from our insurance.
SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and limits apply. Premiums are risk profile dependent and reviewed annually. Client comments do not constitute financial advice.
Coming up on the book reading, Why Men Had Women.
Many girls also experience a deficiency of father love. Girls need loving adult men as much as boys do. They need present, caring fathers to show them how to relate to men healthily and authentically, whether in platonic or sexual ways, in their own adult lives.
How I'd love to dance with my father again.
Catch the book reading on SFM Monday to Thursday at 11:45 on the Talking Point.
Talking Finance with Brian Hirsch, making sense of your finance.
All right, we continue talking finance with Brian this morning. So, Brian, I think when I look at the questions that we're going to be dealing with for today, some of them also have to do with the announcements, of course, that came out of the budget. And there was quite a lot of hype about the two-pot retirement system. And we actually also had a few questions from our listeners who were asking about, what does this mean now? And what advice do you have for them, given there's a lot more clarity around the two-pot retirement system and when people can start making these withdrawals, Brian?
At last we've had the date. The date is the 1st September. And what is going to happen on the 1st September, there are going to be virtually 3 pots. It's not 2 pots because although the retirement system talks about 2 pots, the first stage is what we call the vested component, and that's everything you have in your retirement funds as at the 31st of August 2024. Part of that will go into what is calling a savings component for starters, and you will be able to do a once-off withdrawal of 10% of that figure up to a maximum of 30,000. It's a one-time withdrawal. Thereafter, all your future contributions will be divided into 2 segments. There will be the savings component and the retirement component. 1/3 will go into the savings component. 2/3 will go into the retirement component. So that is future contributions. And once a year, you will be able to withdraw from the savings component, and it's a minimum of 2,000 Rand that you can draw, but you are limited to 10% of what that pot is. So it's only future contributions that will give you future savings, but as the 31st of August, what you have, you'll be able to do 10% of that savings component, and that will with a maximum of 30,000. The one danger I must point out, and people don't realize, you are going to pay tax on that withdrawal. Remember, when you make a contribution to a retirement fund, you get a tax deduction that comes off your taxable income. And if you're in a very high tax bracket, you could get a tax break of 45%. And if you're a low tax bracket, you can get a break of 18%. So whatever you put into your retirement fund, when you take money out now on the 2-pot system, you will be taxed at marginal rates of tax. And let me just explain. If you calculate your earnings, let's say your earnings are 300,000 and you're paying 50,000 Rand in tax, you are paying an average rate of 16%. 16% of your earnings is going to revenue. Now, for every Rand you earn over 300,000, you will then pay tax on that Rand, which works out to over 26%. So when you take money out of the 2-pot system, you are going to be paid tax on the highest rate as if this was an increase in your yearly earnings, and you could pay tax as much as between 26% and 45%. So you've got to realize it's not all going to come out tax-free. It is going to have an impact of whatever you withdraw at retirement. But if you're really desperate and you need the money and it's about doing certain things that are required, if you're trying to pay off expensive debt rather than what I call comfortable debt, which is bond finance and maybe even motor car finance, then maybe it's an answer. But it comes in on the 1st of September. We have that now. It's absolutely clear that's when it's coming in.
You and I, Brian, talk a lot about medical inflation and just the ever-increasing costs of medical aid. Let's talk about the NHI and some of the announcements that have been made and what it means then for those that are on medical aid and gap cover.
Yeah, well, understand the first thing is the bill is sitting on the President's desk waiting for signature. There's been a lot of opposition to the current bill, and in the current bill, if it is passed into legislation, in other words, if the President puts his signature to the bill, there will no doubt about it be legal consequences, because there are a lot of issues in the NHR bill that are problematical. However, one of the concerns is that it's in the bill that if whatever the NHR is able to provide in terms of healthcare, your medical aid will no longer be able to give you that. You will only be able to get from your medical aid those covers that are not covered by NHR. But that's only when NHR is fully implemented. It's not at the start. So for the next 10, because I don't see it in NHR being implemented for at least the next 10 to 15 years. It may take a start because we do need universal health care. It may start off, but it'll take time for the full implementation of NHR. So during that period of time, your medical aid will continue. You don't need to worry. Keep your medical aid going. Obviously, I always make the comment, check that you're in the right plan, and you need to talk to a healthcare specialist, a healthcare broker. Most medical companies today have a commission built into the premium or built into the contribution that you make to the medical aid. So it's not costing you more to speak to a broker, because medical inflation is running at between 8 and 9% a year. And in some cases there is restrictions. I mean, some of a lot of these sophisticated medical aids have savings plans, then you go into your gap cover, then you go to threshold, and when you get to threshold, you then are back in the medical aid system. But they've now imposed limitations. So you need to talk to a healthcare consultant, but there's no reason to concern yourself about stopping a medical aid now or stopping gap cover. Gap cover does not replace medical aid, but what gap cover does is in hospital, it picks up the difference between what the doctor may charge and what is tariff. Now, there are a lot of doctors who are networked to different medical aids who will charge you the tariff. You need to check when you go to a specialist. Are you a network doctor? Do you charge tariff? Because if you don't, and I'm going to have to pay 500% and I'm going to have to come money out of my own pocket, that's where gap cover is a benefit. There are a lot of top specialists who are in networks. I think of Discovery. I think we have 91% of doctors who are networked to them. They don't charge more than what Discovery charge, but you need to check with the doctor that you go to. And I know it's a difficult one because people have relationships with doctors who may not be network. I'll give one example. Let's take the news and I'll give an example when we return.
All right, thanks for that, Brian. Oh, look at what happens when you're in that seat, eh? Suddenly you can see the time. I don't have to round you up. I should put you in that seat every Tuesday, Brian. All right, it's time for the latest news headlines.
Good morning, I'm Anne Musan. The headlines: tensions are high in Lurir Park in Bloemfontein as police have used stun grenade against protesting residents of a land invasion. The residents and illegal occupants have been separated by police following a standoff. City Power says Akenhof substation repairs will affect water supply in Johannesburg. The entity is conducting emergency repairs on a feeder board at the substation after one of the isolators experienced a flash over yesterday evening. And DA leader John Steenhuisen has denied supporting Israel in the Middle East conflict. He was speaking on the SABC's Morning Live earlier this morning. I'll have details on these and other stories at 11.
The Market Update, Monday to Thursday, 6 to 7 p.m.
Want to stay ahead of the financial game? Join us tonight from 6 to 7 p.m. for an insightful journey through the day's market developments, financial updates, and investment news. Tune in for your daily dose of financial intelligence as we navigate the twists and turns of the financial landscape with expert insights. Only on the SAFM Market Update.
SAFM Market Update with Jimmy Muyaha. Beyond the headline on SAFM.
With the seventh suspect, is it known whether the person handed themselves over like the sixth suspect?
He did not hand himself over. I wouldn't say they handed themselves over. It was because our team was hard at work in tracing the suspects. We need to commend the Eswatini police for cooperating with us. They executed the warrant, and now it's a matter of extradition processes.
Brigadier Tlandamata is the spokesperson for the police, and this is in relation to the murder of Keenan, aka Forbes, as well as Tibelo Tips Mutswane.
Beyond the headline with Aldrin Sampier on SAFM. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m. The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
All right, we continue the conversation. We're talking finance with Brian Hirsch, dealing with some of the questions that, of course, you put through last month, and also touched a bit on his reflections on the budget and what it means for our personal finances. So, Brian, here's a good question. Can one sell one's property and enter into a reverse mortgage agreement where they can live in their home, and on their death, their home is sold and the person who's giving them the bond recoups the capital and interest?
Yeah, Cathy, all over the world, you have what's called reverse mortgages. You have pensioners who are asset rich and income poor. So they have this asset. They'll never be able to get a bond from an institution, because you can only get a bond if you can show that you can repay the bond. And also at that age, you can't get a bond for 20 or 30 years. But in other parts of the world, yes. In South Africa, Alexander Forbes had an arrangement 20 years ago when they did reverse mortgages. In other words, they would give a percentage based on your age as upfront cash to the owner of the property, and the owner of the property then would have to make sure that the property stays insured and they maintain the property. They would then have the use of that capital, the property, and they would have life rights to that property, and on their death the property gets sold and the money is repaid to the organisation that's lent that person the money. However, with interest rates being so high in South Africa, in prime rate being 11.75%, and with properties in most of South Africa, and I say that carefully and guarded, because there are areas where properties are still commanding higher prices, but certainly in the Gauteng area, what you can get for your property today is a lot less than what you could have got 5, 6, 7 years ago. There's no inflation in return on your property, and therefore you cannot get a reverse mortgage in South Africa, which is a problem for pensioners who've got properties, and the property so their question is, what do I do? Do I downsize? And if you downsize, there are 3 blocks you need to tick. 1, will you come out with money between the property you sell and the property you replace? 2, will you save money on a monthly basis? And then the 3rd, which is not financial but is more subjective, will you be happy? But yes, it's really a problem for individuals in South Africa because of the fall, particularly in most areas, the value of their properties falling. But remember, if you're selling in a bad market, you're also going to be buying in a bad market. I had a couple that were in my office yesterday. They were hoping to get 3.5 million rand for their property. Let's assume they only get 2.8. They'll be able to replace for maybe a smaller property, maybe for 1.3, come out with 1.5 million, which they then can invest and get the income, which will add to their pension income to help them survive. I'd just like to go back to one thing, Cathy, when I spoke about medical aid. I do want to finish it with your permission on that point. Do I have your permission?
Yes, of course, Brian.
Okay. Someone I know needed a cataract operation. and they went to a doctor recommended by the optometrist, and the surgeon said it's going to cost them 100,000 rand. They're a member of Discovery Medical Aid. I've told them to phone Discovery and find out who is a network doctor. They phoned Discovery. They had a choice of 4 or 5 surgeons who would do that, and it has been covered 100% by the plan. So when I talk about network doctors, the difficulty is that so many people over the years have built up good relationships with their doctors, and they want to continue with that relationship, and that doctor is not networked. So that doctor, unless they charge you medical aid rates, you are going to have to take money out of your pocket. It's a difficult one to do, but all I'm saying is, if you've got something major and you're not with a network doctor, you need to think carefully about whether you can afford to have the luxury of using a doctor who's not networked, or do you have to go to a network doctor or a network hospital. I know it may feel uncomfortable, but it will certainly help save money over the long term if you're dealing with a doctor who's networked versus a doctor who's not networked. Speak to your medical aid company if you're in that situation.
All right. Thanks for that, Brian. You also dealt with a number of questions, and I guess also because it was towards a tax year end, around retirement annuities and when the best time to contribute towards retirement annuities actually is.
Best time 1st of March. Start on the 1st of March. You see, at the end of the year, whatever you contribute to a retirement annuity is tax deductible. But most people don't have the lump sum. So if you start now in March and you're putting let's say you're putting 500 rand away into a retirement annuity, by the end of February you'll have contributed 6,000 rand, which obviously will come off your taxable income. And if you're contributing more, 1,000 or 2,000, it's easier to pay monthly than to find that annual cost. And if you do pay monthly, you can go to your salaries department, you can tell them you're now contributing to a retirement annuity, and they will adjust your PAYE there and then. So someone who's earning, say, 400,000 rand goes to their salaries department and says, I'm paying 200,000 rand, 2,000 rand a month to a retirement annuity. Your tax will come down by something in the order of 500 to 600 rand, which will add to what you're paying to the retirement annuity. So best time to contribute to retirement annuity for those who don't have this annual lump sum to put in February is paying it monthly, and no better time than March.
Brian, I think we also have issues of people still wanting to know where is the best place to invest their money. Questions around government bonds?
Yeah, look, I've got no problem with government bonds. Currently, a 5-year government bond is paying 10%. It's taxable. Always remember, interest is taxable, although we all get a tax rebate. If you're under the age of 65, I think it's 22,800, and over 65, 34,500. So if you're earning interest and you're going to pay tax on the interest you earn, you can deduct that amount of 22,800 or 34,500 from that interest. Government bond is paying 10% over 5 years. Remember, you may be able to get that from your bank at the moment, but interest rates will start to come down this year, certainly internationally, and we tend to we tend to take lead from what happens internationally. And if interest rates start coming down, you may think I'm getting a good rate today, but next year what will that rate be, and the following year? And if you're now used to living on the higher rates as we have over the last 15 months, if interest rates start coming down, you're going to have less in your pocket, and with inflation you're going to need more. So I've got no problem with a government bond, and if you're not in if you don't have taxable income, if your tax threshold is you lower than that, I think it's a good thing, and I've got no fear with a government bond. When you buy bonds, you have a risk to capital, although your interest is secure, but capital values go up and down. When you buy government retail bonds, you can buy 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. It is laborious, by the way. You have to go online. You can't talk to a broker about doing it for you. You have to go to, it's simply enough, www.governmentbonds.co.za, and you can follow the print and go through it. So I've got no problem, and I have a simple philosophy. What would I do for my mother? What would I do? Well, I wouldn't do it for myself because I don't need income, but my mom needs income. I would certainly have no qualms about going into a government bond.
All right, I'm going to be taking your questions for Brian on 086 000 2032 is the number to dial for any questions you may have for Brian. And on the WhatsApp voice note line, you can send those voice notes to 0614 104107. You can also send your text messages on the WhatsApp line. We're going to take a quick break. I'm back with Brian after this.
If you're active on social media and love SAFM, we hope you'll take a moment to like or follow our SAFM page on Facebook and Twitter. These are the best places to find all the guest information, conversations, and stories you love from your favorite presenters, along with regular updates from SABC News. And don't forget, you can send your questions to feedback@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversation.
Some say, amadoda ayipheli. Others are saying, X ongasolveki. Black and white, tackles, gold and black in the DStv Premiership. This is the Soweto Derby, Mzansi's biggest football jamboree. Sazoshuba, Amapagania versus Amakhosi on Saturday, 9 March at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC One and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
The Northwest, the Provincial Legislature Portfolio Committee on Economic Development, Environment, Tourism, Agriculture and Rural Development will conduct public hearings on the 6th of March on Climate Change Bill and Public Procurement Bill at Zirasta Municipal Hall, Naka Mudre Mulema, Potchefstroom Banquet Hall, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, Khanyisa Auditorium Hall, Dr. Ruth Sohomozi Mompati, and Mabudisa Community Hall in Muruleng, Buchanala District. All hearings start at 10 o'clock.
Hashtag SAFM Talking Point.
Are you one of the millions of South African households receiving television through DStv, OpenView, StarSat or streaming platforms? You will not be affected by analog switch off. If you own an integrated digital television with an outdoor UHF aerial and live in an area that has digital terrestrial network coverage, you don't need an additional decoder to watch free-to-air television and will not be affected by the analog switch-off. Visit www.dcdt.gov.za for a list of some of the compatible TV models on the market. Hashtag Go Digital. For more information, send a WhatsApp message to 0600 625 458. You can also call 0860 736 832 or email support@sentech.co.za.
SAFM. Prime time all day long.
All right, we continue talking finance with Brian Hirsch. Of course, I'm taking your questions for Brian this morning on 086 000 2032. That's the number to dial. On the WhatsApp voice note line, 0614 104107. So, Brian, we've got a question here from MK in East London. MK wants to know, when banks say earn up to 8% interest, how does that look over 5 years if you invest, let's say, 200,000 Rand? And is this the best way to grow your money in that period?
Okay, well, certainly with a bank, you're going to have certainty and security. You're going to know exactly what's going to happen at the end of 5 years. There's a if the bank says they're going to pay you 8%, there's a difference if they're going to pay you 8% compound or 8% simple. Compound means that every year, let's say on the first year, your 200,000 earns 8%, so it's now worth 216,000. Are you going to get 8% on the 200,000, or are you going to get 8% on the 200,000 plus the interest you earn? In other words, that's called compound interest. And I'll give you some numbers. On 200,000 on simple interest, if you earn 8% a year, and it's 16,000 every year, at the end of 5 years, you'll have 280,000. If it's compound interest on interest, you'll have close to 300,000. But you'll be locked in for that 5-year period. Let me make the problem. Is this the best way to grow your capital? There's a big difference to saving. Saving is certainly and secure. Looking for growth is taking on some risk. If I have a 5-year time horizon, I would be a little bit more aggressive. I would be a little bit more balanced. I would not only want to be earning bank interest, I'd want to have a little bit of equity, maybe even a little bit of property now, because property prices are picking up, and we've seen a good run now in property markets. I would be in a more balanced portfolio, and that's if you've got a 5-year time horizon. If you think I can't lock in for 5 years and I may need my money after 1 or 2 or 3 years, then you want certainty and security. You don't want to take on any risk. But over 5 years, I'm more inclined to advise take on a little bit more risk, not to just go for a fixed rate of return.
All right, thanks for that, Brian. Here's another question for you on the WhatsApp voice note line.
Hello, Brian, and says Cathy. My employer deducted tax saving from my salary. I do not understand why it is deducted tax saving. What is a tax saving?
I don't really know. I mean, when you say your employer deducted some tax saving, as your employer opened up an investment account and deducted from your salary and now placed that investment in a tax-free savings account. So because you're not on air, I can't ask you some questions, but I suggest you go and ask your employer, what have you deducted, why have you deducted it, and where is it now invested? So maybe there was some circular that came around advising that tax-free investments, which is a good way of saving tax because the investment itself is growing without paying tax on dividends or paying tax on interest or paying capital gains tax on any gain. But I think in this particular instance, I can't answer the question because I don't have any idea. But go and ask your employer, go to your personal department and ask them, what have you actually done? Why have you indicated that this has gone into tax-free? But tax-free what?
Mm-hmm. Brian, if an employer is wanting to make any kinds of deductions on one's salary, are they not supposed to get your permission beforehand?
Yes, you'd have to sign some documents, and also you'd have to understand where that money has been invested. So because it was a voice message, I couldn't ask any questions. But I hope that helps the individual to go and speak to the employer and find out.
All right. Well, yeah, that's really the best advice because there shouldn't be anything happening, with your salary that you don't approve and that you only find out about after the fact.
Correct.
We're talking finance with Brian Hirsch. More of your calls on 086 000 2032. Remember, at the last Tuesday of the month, your opportunity to raise whatever questions with Brian you may want him to deal with. And on the WhatsApp line, 0614 104 107.
And we would buy 500 cars and we would buy 500 more. So sell your car for the best price and we won't think about it twice. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far. SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
What's happening at the school?
A terrible situation which the parents find it no longer acceptable. That you have kids going grade 9s once per week and grade 8s twice per week. Really unacceptable. So that means you've got parents leaving their kids on a daily basis in the morning at home instead of going to school.
Is it just a shortage of accommodation, in other words, buildings, or is there a shortage of teachers as well?
There's a shortage of teachers also. The department's representative assured us that once they move, there would be sufficient teachers.
Sure. Tabo Kwaka, thank you very much indeed. A concerned parent at Teresa Park High School. You're with SAFM.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes, 6 to 9 a.m.
They new and exciting moves for the SABC2 familiar. From the 4th of March, the life-changing game show Deal or No Deal with Katlego Maboye officially moves to SABC2 weekdays at 6:30 p.m. It's where you belong.
Talking Finance with Brian Hirsch, making sense of your finance.
We continue our conversation this morning talking finance with Brian. So, Brian, we've got more questions coming through on the WhatsApp voice note line. We're just going to play a voice note and give you a chance to respond immediately after.
Good morning, Cathy and Brian. Brian, the questions that I like to ask is as follows. If I'm having a retirement annuity with a certain company, do I need to go to HR to tell them that, or the taxes will go down because they will definitely see those retirement annuity on my pay slip? Do I really need to go there, or they will see on my pay slip and then adjust the tax accordingly?
To answer that question, how will your employer know that you're contributing to a retirement annuity? Because normally when you contribute to a retirement annuity, it's a personal arrangement between you and the retirement company, and you make a contribution. So I'm suggesting that if you are contributing to a retirement annuity, inform your payroll department so they can adjust your taxes. Don't just expect it to happen. Unless it's arranged by the company, it may be a company group retirement annuity, then obviously the company would know that you're making a contribution. But if you're making an individual contribution of 100 Rand, 500 Rand, whatever it is, let your company know, because you will get a tax deduction when you submit a tax return at the end of the year. But you will have to submit a tax return. If you're not submitting a tax return and you're making contribution to retirement annuity, then it's much easier to do it through the payroll system than start to actually submit a tax return to get that deduction. If you don't get that deduction through your payroll, you will have to submit a tax return, and then revenue will give you that refund. But why wait? Rather do it immediately so you can get that deduction on a monthly basis.
Hello, Cathy. Good morning. It's Finley here in Cape Town. Will you please kindly request Brian to repeat the two-pot system again? Man, I just missed but I was driving in an area that's got no network. Thank you kindly, Finley.
Well, to respond to that, on the 31st of August, you will have an amount of money in your retirement fund, and the two-pot retirement system will not apply to this money, although 10% of the retirement savings to a maximum of 30,000 Rand will be transferred to the savings pot on the 1st September 2024 as a starting balance in the savings component. All future contributions after the 1st of September will be divided into a savings component and a retirement component. The 1/3 of your retirement contributions will go into the savings component, and 2/3 will go into the retirement component. You will not be able to draw from the retirement component. I must just add, this is also a change, because those under the age of 55, if you leave employer now, you can actually take the funds, which may not be advisable, but you don't have to preserve it. From the 1st of September, any future money you will not be able to draw until retirement. So under the savings component, an amount, all your future contributions will go into that pot, and on a yearly basis, you will be able to take up to a minimum. You won't be able to draw less than 2,000. You'll be able to draw money out of your that savings pot on a yearly basis. And I made the comment that the danger is, and you need to be aware, that what you draw will be taxed at marginal rates. In other words, it will be added to what you earn, and you will pay tax at the higher level. It could be anything between 26 to 45%. The Old Mutual have put out figures, and I've only got this on hearsay, that they expect 1 million million individuals on the 1st of September to want to be drawing that 30,000. So don't expect it to all happen in September. They've got to have everything on file, all the fund rules have to be registered, and you're going to be in a queue. So I've always said, start to find out earlier from the company, when can you submit an application to draw the money out so that you get ahead of the long queue that we expect following the implementation on the 1st September. Hope that helps you. Cathy, you with us?
All right. Yes, I'm still here, Brian. Well, I thought we were going to take more voice note questions, but we might not have enough time for it. So let me read out this one for you, Brian. It says, Brian mentioned a scenario earlier. I'm in a similar situation where I can no longer prove affordability of the bond, although I'm paying for it every month. I want to remove my ex-wife's name and register the bond only in my name. What can I do as I cannot show monthly income?
You've got a problem because, the minute you tamper with the bond, the bank may say, in terms of the National Credit Act, you no longer apply for such a bond. So really, I'm not sure how you dealt with it in your divorce, because you said you want to remove it, your ex from it. You need to, I don't know if you've spoken to the financial institution, but the fact that you can pay the bond, I don't know how long you still got to go, you need to speak to the financial institution that's given you the bond to get further details from them, what can you do. The fact that the bond's in both your name, is the property registered in both your names, and you want to move the property out of your ex-spouse's name into your name so that you've got full ownership of that property. I don't know the answer, but I'll tell you what I do. I will speak to our legal practitioners to get you an answer, and I'll respond next week to that question.
All right, Brian.
Interesting one. Really an interesting one.
If you can just give us your details, Brian, for our listeners that want to get in touch in the week.
Because of February and because of the end of the tax year, my line has been closed. You can get hold of me on 011 880 4888. The rules are as follows. You leave all your numbers. You need to leave the area you're phoning from. You need to leave the question. So if I do try and get hold of you and I can't get you for some reason or leave a message, at least I can pass the question you have onto someone in your area who then could maybe respond to that question.
All right, Brian, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for yet another edition of Talking Finance with Brian Hirsch. And of course, Brian should be back with us again next week, Tuesday. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, I hope you're back with me as well. I miss your pretty face. I miss your pretty smile. I miss your energy. Take care.
Thank you, Brian. I'll be back in studio soon. And just a reminder, of course, we are broadcasting live from the Johannesburg City Hall. This is where the MEC for Finance, Jacob Mamabolo, is delivering his 2024 Gauteng budget. We'll be unpacking that budget with him shortly. For now, it's 11 o'clock. Time for the latest news update.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
In our top stories, clashes over land invasion in Bloemfontein and substation repairs affecting Joburg water supply. Good morning. Tensions are high in Lurir Park in Bloemfontein as police have used stun grenade against protesting residents over land invasion. The residents and illegal occupants have been separated by police following a standoff. Earlier, residents of the suburb blocked the new occupants of land in the area from continuing to erect structures. People started invading land on Saturday at Brandkop Farm. Police are currently monitoring the two groups. City Power says Aikenhof substation repairs is affecting water supply in Johannesburg. The entity is conducting emergency repairs on a feeder board at the substation after one of the isolators experienced a flashover yesterday evening. This will affect a number of areas including Mogale City, Krugersdorp, Carltonville, parts of Brits and Rustenburg. This has resulted to Rand Water to suspend pumping water and no alternative supply is available. City Power spokesperson Isaac Mangena says power supply to the residential customers is not affected.
We will be dismantling the feeder board where the flashover occurred to do the repairs and pressure test it before attempting to restore. We unfortunately anticipate this work to go on until Tuesday evening. Power supply to the residential customers feeding from Aikenhof substation is fortunately not affected by this. City Power has notified the Rand Water Board and is working closely with its senior teams to basically implement the solution to ensure that power is restored at the substation.
Many provinces are facing financial constraints and are exploring new strategies to generate revenues. This stems from a reduction from allocations of funds to provinces, a result of government initiatives aimed at consolidating budgets to reduce debt. Among the initial provinces to disclose their 2024-2025 provincial budgets are Gauteng, Limpopo and the Western Cape. Gauteng's Finance MEC and Limpopo's Treasury MEC will present their budgets today, while Western Cape's Finance MEC is scheduled to present hers on Thursday. Chairperson of the Finance Portfolio Committee in the Gauteng Provincial Legislature, Paul Malema.
Among other things, we would have expected the MEC to say something about the complete removal of e-tolls from the province, and also for the MEC to outline a process plan on how the Gauteng Provincial Treasury is going to fund all the commitments made by the Premier of Gauteng during his deliverance of the State of the Province address.
And moving on to election stories. DA leader John Steenhuisen has denied supporting Israel in the Middle East conflict. He was speaking on the SABC's Morning Live earlier this morning. Recently, 3 DA leaders left the party, accusing it of suppressing the voices of pro-Palestine members within the organisation. But Steenhuisen says they've also condemned Israel's stance against a two-state solution.
Do you support Israel? No, we don't support Israel. We call for a two-state solution with an independent, sovereign, unoccupied Palestine living alongside a secure Israel. That is the only way forward to be able to bring lasting peace in the Middle East. We have condemned Prime Minister Netanyahu's comments when he says that he doesn't believe in the two-state solution. We've consistently said that human rights must be upheld, that the International Court of Justice's ruling must be upheld. We don't pro-Israel or pro-Palestine. We pro-peace and anti-radicalization, both sides.
Dr. Khosile Tlhape has parted ways with the governing party, the ANC. He penned his resignation to his branch secretary on the 1st of this month, informing the party that he was leaving the liberation movement with immediate effect. The ophthalmologist and healthcare leader is a former president of the Health Professions Council of South Africa, a founder of the African Medical Association, and a former chairman of the South African Medical Association. He did not provide reasons for his decision to part ways with his political home. Further afield, and finally, millions of voters across the U.S. are heading to the polls to choose the candidates for November's presidential election. Super Tuesday votes in caucuses are taking place across 15 states and in one overseas territory. The BBC's Sarah Smith reports.
The first Tuesday in March is traditionally super in an election year because it's often when it becomes clear who the presidential candidates are going to be. This year there are unlikely to be any surprises, as the two frontrunners are so far ahead of their rivals. The former president, Donald Trump, has already won every Republican primary race except one. His only remaining challenger, Nikki Haley, scored a single victory in Washington, D.C. She's not expected to win any of the 15 states that are going to the polls today. The Trump campaign predicts he will have secured an unbeatable majority by the middle of March.
Recapping the top story, tensions are high in Lurir Park in Bloemfontein as police have used stun grenade against protesting residents of a land invasion. The residents and illegal occupants have been separated by police following a standoff. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
Introducing a collection of Audi Black and Urban Special Edition models crafted for the bold and curated for the progressive. From the sporty Audi S3 and elegant A4 to the distinctive Q2 and Q3, each vehicle has been created to be an extension of your identity. Style, design, comfort.